Howdy folks, Uncle Bill here again from DEADPIT.com, and I mentioned this on the show, so I wanted to go ahead and get this video done. It's one I've been wanting to make for a long ass time, and that is a video about the best comedic horror films ever made. And actually you could call these movies B movies if you wanted to. I mean, they've got, some of them are just straight up comedies, and some of them have actual just comedic elements to them, but they're supposed to be real, scary types of horror films. So I guess in a way it would be better to call them B movies, but I think that the term B movies gets used way too much to just mean any movie with a budget under $50 million. So these are just good horror films that actually tend to have like a comedic content to it. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the ones that there's like this band of low budget independent filmmakers out there that make these films from the 80s that a lot of people don't know about, and the people that do know about them, you love them. But they were all like a little group of people. I don't have a name for them or anything, but it was like Fred Olin Ray, David Dakota, J.R. Bookwalter, just a whole slew of these guys that made a lot of these different films. But this one's from David Dakota, and one of my favorites because it has a bunch of killer scream queens from the 80s in it, including Linnea Quigley and Brink Stevens. It actually features Hal fucking Havens doing basically the same role that he did in Night of the Demons in this film as well. It's like the stooge role all over again. But this is Sorority Babes in the Slime Ball Bowl-O-Rama, which is one of the hardest titles to say ever. Try doing it like 3 times really, really fast. Also has Andres Jones in it from Nightmare on Elm Street 4. You might remember him. What do you say about this movie? It's a story of a group of kids that I think they're college kids that attempt to steal a bowling trophy from this bowling alley, and in the process of stealing it, they unleash this killer imp, which is this little demon thing that it's basically like a little leprechaun or wizard or something that can grant wishes and cause weird shit to happen. And Linnea Quigley is like the tough, badass chick who's in the bowling alley. I can't even remember why she's in the bowling alley now, but she's like the street thug in the film, and they're like the goody two-shoes college boys, frat boys, and all this stuff. It's just a good, cheesy 80s movie, and it's good to see Linnea Quigley in her prime at that time, and Hal Havens is great in it, as always. I don't think Hal Havens was bad in anything. Here's one that recently got talked about a lot because these guys showed up at the Texas Frightmare Weekend. Rick Popko and Dan West. And this is the first film that I ever saw from them, which is a great... This is a comedy, really, okay? It's got horror stuff in it, but it's essentially a comedy. Monstered. I don't even know. It's about a giant killer turd that's kind of mutated in the subway system or the sewer system of this town. And I think the 2 guys that directed the film are also the sheriffs in it, or they're at least in it at some point. But yeah, the sheriff and the sheriff's deputy. But some of the better comedy scenes in a film of this is like a really low budget film, and I'm even amazed that a company like Elite put this out because it's incredibly low budget, much like stuff. And I may have another one in here. I think I do. It's as low budget as this next one that I want to talk about, which is basically no budget. But this is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen that has anything to do with horror films. Destruction Kings, which is a Chris Seaver joint from Low Budget Pictures. This is the movie that I hate to say this because I know that a lot of these different guys for some reason or another don't get along. But this is really the movie that a lot of those low budget comedy films want to make, is this movie right here. It has no budget. It just has some great comedic actors in it, some great characters. You can't get away from this movie for some reason. You got Dracula, Funkenstein, the Wolfman, Bone Jack, and Teen Ape. It's all kinds of homages in this movie to horror films of the past, including just weird shit like Monster Squad. There's a homage to that in it. And they always sneak in references to older horror films and films from the 80s and stuff too. That's like their gimmick or whatever. And this is by far the best one that they've ever done. Just either people love this or hate it, though, is the thing. Like the accents and stuff that the guys have. Bone Jack has an accent, and the whole, oversexed teen ape gimmick, and you either get it or you don't. But when you get it, it's funnier than hell. Oh Lord, you can't really compare this movie to anything. I've never seen anything else like it, and probably never will. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. As you can see, this is the deluxe signed edition. It's signed in gold pen from the Chiodo brothers. You look at that. But it's not really a deluxe signed edition. I just got them to sign it. This is a movie that came out and just completely took everybody by surprise, because it's got one of the silliest premises ever, which is that clowns come down from outer space and they set up this circus, but in it they cocoon people in cotton candy and drink their blood, and there's like a midget clown and the bigger clowns. The midget clown rides around on a little bicycle and they ride in clown cars and stuff, but he's got like superhuman alien strength and all this stuff, so he like punches somebody and knocks their head off. They're just evil clowns who have come to, take over the world and cocoon all these people. And so the really weird thing about this movie is, as silly as the premise is, it plays the premise mostly straight. Like, it plays it to be a scary film. Like, you're really supposed to be taking these clowns seriously, which is, I think, why it works so well. Like, if it didn't do that, then I don't think, if it was just trying to be silly all the time, I don't think it would have worked as well. The Chiodo brothers are great artists, by the way. Frank and Hooker. Out of all of the Frank Henenlotter films, this one I think is the most overtly comedic. Okay, they're all his films: Basket Case, Brain Damage, all the Basket Case movies, and Brain Damage, and they're all comedic to a certain degree. I think Basket Case is probably the most serious one. But I think Frankenhooker is the most intentionally funny one out of all of them. It tries to be funny, and it's basically the story of a guy who backs over his girlfriend, or I think it's his girlfriend, and kills her. So he's desperately trying to put her back together, and he's trying to figure out a way to do that, or he's trying to bring her back to life, I should say. So he tries to put her together with a bunch of different random body parts from hookers that have exploded after they get a hold of super crack, and all the hookers explode, and he tries to take all their limbs and put them together to make his girlfriend come back to life. And of course, she's all messed up and proceeds to wreak havoc and all that different stuff. But just the way a lot of the scenes are shot, the super crack scene where all the hookers explode is fucking hilarious. It's just one of the funnier movies made that way. And this movie, I'm not entirely sure how much this movie is supposed to be funny, but just because of the lead character played by Pamela Springsteen, this movie is hilarious in and of the fact that it's played seriously through most of the film. It's got some great death scenes in it, but her character is so over the top cartoony that it makes you just completely forget that the first Sleepaway Camp even existed. As a matter of fact, there's like two different camps of people. They either like the Sleepaway Camp movie, the original one, because it plays it straight and it has the big shock ending, or they like the second one because it's more campy, Sleepaway Campy, and it has more references, as you can see by the cover, to horror films of the 80s and stuff like that, with the Jason mask and the Freddy glove and all that stuff. But Angela Springsteen should have won a fucking Oscar for this. And it's a shame that now she's taking photographs of Bruce Springsteen's ass, her brother's ass, to put on covers of albums, and she doesn't do any more acting. She needs to come back, because I miss Pamela Springsteen. I believe Renee Estevez is in this movie too. She's in one of them. I can't remember if this is it or not. Yeah, Renee Estevez is in this movie, from the famed Estevez clan. That's funny enough in and of itself. So the rest of these are pretty much popular. So we'll go through them really quick. You probably already know these. Shaun of the Dead. I told you I've seen this film a million times. It gets funnier every time that I see it. It's not only funny, but it's incredibly well made. Simon Pegg's a great actor. Nick Frost is a great actor. Edgar Wright's a great director. The best unintentionally funny movie ever made, Troll 2. I don't know how much I can talk about that movie. Go see Best Worst Movie, the documentary about Troll 2. I think if you go to bestworstmovie.com, you can get hooked up with that or figure out when it's going to be distributed at least. But Troll 2 is an epic masterpiece. This movie was probably one of the more serious ones. This is the signed edition too, signed by Zach Galligan there. Waxwork, I guess it's supposed to be serious, but it has a whole hell of a lot of comedic elements with like the midget butler guy and just the one-liners in the film, like, oh, that's gotta hurt, and all that shit. So I thought Zach Galligan and Deborah Foreman were great in this film. I love Deborah Foreman anyway, even though she's a bit of an asshole. But Waxwork is a great comedic horror film. You'll enjoy that. One of the best known horror films of all time. Dead Alive, the goriest horror film. I still think this is the goriest horror film I've ever seen. I don't think it'll ever be topped. Now people say, well, the gore doesn't look real or whatever. It's, you know, it looked real enough then, it looks real enough now. I don't know what, if you're looking for like August Underground gore, then you're not going to find it in this, but it is the goriest per volume horror film I've ever seen, and it's funny too, oddly enough. It doesn't take itself too seriously. A lot of stuff with Lionel and his mother and all that stuff, with them all coming back to life and him having to deal with that, is incredibly funny. I always loved his uncle character in this too, that was the big asshole towards the end. I think this is the signed edition of this one too, signed by everybody and their grandmother. Return of the Living Dead. I don't even know what to say about this movie that hasn't already been said. It's probably the best zombie film, one of the best zombie films ever by far. It's definitely the best zombie film that has any kind of comedy in it. I think the comedy in this film was intentional, but it's a very dry, kind of witty comedy. It's not like Monster where it's over the top or anything like that. The stuff in this movie just... Well, plus it's a good movie too. So if you make a good film and you put just comedic stuff in it, all the stuff works together and makes this just an all-around good movie. It has good gore, it has good actors, it's a good director, Dan O'Bannon, that directed Alien. Also, just happens to be a funny-ass movie. I think most of the humor in this film, though, is because of the older actors in it, with Dan Caffa and Clu Gulager, and I'm trying to remember his name. I can't believe I can't remember his name. James Karen. Who's a really incredibly nice guy. The last film that I have, probably my number one comedic horror film of all time, is not... I don't have a DVD of it because it doesn't exist yet. But Blood Diner. I've got the VHS, but I couldn't find it. I've got the poster right over here. You probably can't see it. It's not in frame. But Blood Diner is my favorite comedic horror film of all time. It's completely irreverent, completely stupid, completely cheap, completely foolish, ridiculously, absurdly violent, and it just has shit in it that doesn't make any sense, but it's great. And they didn't, like, there's scenes where they didn't even set up the stage or the sets, so you can tell like that it's just something that they just built that day, and it's not even finished when they're walking through it. It's like Rambo did a review of it, and he was trying to explain it. You can't explain the film. You just can't. You have to see it. It's not to be seen, really. It's to be experienced. So check out Blood Diner. You'll probably be able to check it out really soon. That's it. Check out my new Name That Tune video where you can win some great prizes by naming some shit that I'm playing on guitar. Check out DEADPIT.com. I got an interview with Fred Vogel up. Second part of the interview, great interview. We're going to have a lot more stuff coming up. Check out the rest of the YouTube videos. Thanks to everybody that watches this shit.